Hello, 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 and welcome to episode 1 of the Peanut Gallery podcast. In this show, we are going to debate the latest news and developments from the major sports leagues and more. Here at the Peanut Gallery, you're going to hear it exactly how it is. No corporate holdbacks, no censorship, just guys talking about sports. And today, it is my honor to introduce our two commentators. Coming out of the University of Richmond, we have Nico Ellis.
Hey guys, excited to be here. First time on any Peanut Gallery style podcast or episode, so really excited to get after it. Hopefully it's not too clunky, but I'm excited.
And coming from Boston College, we have Pat Mormile.
You know what? When I first started appearing on podcasts, I was like a nice little salmon. You put me on the grill. Nothing really happened. Now I got some seasoning in there. Got a little bit of Asiago ranch dressing on the side. So hopefully I could come in with some hotter takes in this window of my career.
Bring the ludicrous sauce.
And I am your host, Jesse Muir. I'm a diehard Knicks and Mets fan, so I can guarantee you there will be no bias in judging relevant teams. All right, so it's time to buckle in, gentlemen, and let's talk some sports. As the NBA moves south to Orlando, the league is going to feel a little weird. And yet someone is going to have to seize the moment. So my question to you, Nico, is who will be the best player in Orlando?
For me, there's two players that's between. It's between Giannis Antetokounmpo and LeBron James. Kawhi Leonard, he's a great player, but I feel like those are the two we're going between. And for me, it's got to be LeBron James. I think experience prevails, especially in a bubble where you have to come back, get into gear very quickly after so much time off. I think LeBron is going to be able to do that. I think it's very unquantifiable, but I think he's the hungriest player in the bubble. I think he wants it. This is the revenge season. I think he wants to make true on that. Do it for Lakerland, do it for himself. This season, he and Giannis have been the two highest real plus-minus players, and it hasn't been that close. So, yeah, I think it's going to be LeBron James.
Yeah, so personally, I'm going to be on the other side of that pancake, the side with the chocolate chips, sticking out, get a little more chocolatey flavor in there. I'm going with Giannis, and one stat that really stuck out to me was that since the All-Star break, the team is plus 156 with him and negative 76 without him. So they did start 4-0 in games without him, but now he realizes that he's going to have to carry the team. And also it's very underrated how LeBron's been with his family, and he's had Bronny and Bryce, and I think the last one's named Zuri, and that's something that's niched its way into his life, and he's going to be without that for a couple months at least. And for Giannis, he just had his son, and this is kind of his getaway. He's going to be partying it up with Brooke Lopez, doing some funny shit in the hotel, and I think this is his time to just be a free bird and just let his nuts hang.
I think LeBron definitely has some increased motivation coming in this year, especially after The Last Dance and the tragic death of Kobe Bryant. He's wearing the Lakers colors on his back. I think he's got something to prove, and I think that increased motivation already with one of the best players in the league, if not the best, is going to prove big for him in Orlando.
Another stat to look at to kind of support James's case is that the Lakers' net efficiency with James on the court this season has been 10.7 points per 100 possessions, which would rank second in the league. While with James off the court, that production plummets to a net efficiency of minus 2.6 points, which would be 22nd. So kind of like what Pat brought up with James on and off the court, it's been very night and day. And for those who just have watched a lot of Laker basketball this season, even when Anthony Davis is on the court without James, they're a lottery team, to be quite frank. Without James on the court, they're a lottery team. And he just makes everything click in that offense. He's going to be upping his minutes. He's going to be fresh. He's been in the cryo chamber per his Instagram. He's coming out. He's going to be good to go.
Interesting. I saw in a Bleacher Report article that was like top 10 players of the NBA season. I'm pretty sure I saw Eric Bledsoe, or not Eric Bledsoe, Chris Middleton in the top 10, which I thought was crazy.
Middleton having a great season, close to 50, 40, 90, if not above. I don't have the stat in front of me, but he's been shooting lights out. It'll be interesting to see if he shows up in the playoffs.
Yeah. All right. Well, moving on, staying with the NBA, a lot of pundits are predicting a Clippers-Lakers matchup in the Western Conference Finals. So my question to you, Pat, is if your life was on the line, there's a train running towards you and your family, and you have to choose one in a 7-game series, Lakers or Clippers, who do you got?
So this one was really tough. When I saw that this was going to be a question on the show, my life flashed before my eyes, Jesse. I thought about all the birthday parties that I didn't remember. I thought about all the games in the front yard, with my siblings, just shooting the ball. And I thought, what matters? What do I want to go out dying with? I want to go out with a team with an absolute dog mentality. You got Pat Beverly, dog. Montrezl Harrell, dog. Lou Williams, the greatest sixth man of all time, dog. And, of course, Kawhi Leonard, an absolute dog. Not to mention Paul George, who's had LeBron James just stick his nuts in his face repeatedly in the Eastern Conference. He was on that Pacers team, and he could never get by him. This is his chance. If you think the Clippers aren't going to show up, well, they got a lot of motivation. Even if Kawhi won last year, he still wants to show that many people don't, as Nico just said, don't think that he's in the best player in the league conversation, which I agree with, but I'm there for him to prove me wrong. I got to put my money on the Clippers, even though I believe that LeBron is the best player in the world. I do believe that. I got to put my money on the deeper roster in the Clippers.
I'll just say, you're talking about dogs. Let's flash back to the last game of the NBA season, or the former NBA season before the coronavirus hit. Lakers, Clippers, LeBron James drives in, fillet, and then Pat Beverly up in his face. He flicks him off like a fly. That's no dog. That dog's got no bite. LeBron's the dog in this series. He's the best player in that series. And frankly, you could say Kawhi's close. I don't think it's that close. In that game, LeBron controlled the tempo. He was clearly the best player. And past that, who on that team is going to be defending a healthy Anthony Davis, fully rested? The Lakers have the best player, and arguably, when healthy, the second best player in that series. You have Montrezl Harrell, great player. He's 6'8". Anthony Davis, 6'10", 6'11". Freakish athleticism. I don't know who's going to be guarding. It's not going to be a Vika Zubac. I can tell you that for a fact. He's not going to be guarding AD. They picked up Joakim Noah. He's coming out of who knows where. That guy hasn't touched a basketball in at least 40 years. What's he going to be doing? Nothing. Who's going to be guarding AD? And one thing that was very clear at the start of the season, that the Lakers, they gelled together really quickly. They showed great chemistry, and that's because they're a veteran roster. They've got guys who have been there. Danny Green, champion twice with his opposing player, Kawhi Leonard. He's a champion. LeBron's a champion. They've just got Dwight Howard. I think that's another key player in that series, another big man that it's going to be hard for the Clippers to stack up with, along with fan favorite JaVale McGee, who's currently vlogging the bubble life, but he's another guy. He's not going to be as key of a player, but still, that's another 7-footer that the Clippers are just undersized in a lot of respects, and I think that's going to be hard for them to hang with the Lakers.
I think something that we need to be cautious about is it will be a legacy series. LeBron, he's got to win. I mean, he's got to take it all the way this year. Kawhi, if he wins, the East is weaker. He wins and then goes on to win the championship. Kawhi is putting himself in the top 10, top 15 conversation.
Wow.
It's a legacy series.
I support that. Is
it the changing of the guard? I think that this series is going to be a hell of a watch if it happens. If Zion Williamson has anything to say about it, maybe not. I don't know if it'll happen.
Let that sink right.
We're going to move on to our third topic of the day. A new story in the Washington Post details a terrible history of sexual misconduct within the Redskins organization, starting at the top with owner Dan Snyder. Already on top of the name controversy, the Redskins are showing they're one of the worst franchises in sports, both on the field and off. So, Nico, my question to you is, can you think of a team that's worse than them overall as a franchise in pro-American sports?
This may be a bit of a cop-out. They're one of the newer teams in major American sports, founded in 1988. But frankly, this one wasn't too tough for me. It's got to be the Charlotte Hornets. The Charlotte Hornets have never made it to a conference finals, let alone an NBA final. They have never had an MVP player on their roster. They only have 4 playoff series victories in franchise history. They have an all-time winning percentage of .441, which is atrocious, and only 7 players in Charlotte Hornets / Bobcats franchise history have been selected to an All-Star game. It's just a sad organization. I don't know what Michael Jordan was buying into there. That was just a misallocation of money. I don't know what he was doing. They did have cool 90s retro jerseys. I will give them that. But past a jersey for a Sunday party, I don't really know what you're doing with the Charlotte Hornets. That's just not a place you want to be.
Yeah, so this one was I had to look into some different teams and their histories to see what I felt about this one. At first, I was thinking the Lions, a team who's been around since 1930 and has never made a Super Bowl. But I think I'm going to have to go with the Seattle Mariners, who have been around. They're a little bit of a newer team, 1977. They haven't made the playoffs in pretty much the last 20 years, which is definitely tougher in baseball. But you also have to consider that they're the only active team in MLB history to never appear in a World Series. They've never appeared in a World Series. With Ken Griffey Jr., I was watching his highlights one day, and I was like, this is why isn't he considered, like, up there with Babe Ruth? Like, he had some dominant regular seasons, and then I see that he only won, like, 1 or 2 playoff series I think he only appeared in 1 playoff series in his time with the Mariners, which was like at least 10 or 12 years. And you also think about the wasted career of Felix Hernandez, a great pitcher, but he never appeared in a playoff game. So I think I got to give it to the Mariners. They're a team that's never really been at the peak. And even if you have a history of being awful, like the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are newer, but they have a history of being awful. Blake Bortles had that 1 year. They did go back to 4-12, but Blake Bortles caught a lightning rod in his ass, and he rode it all the way to the AFC Championship.
I will give a quick retort to that, in that the Seattle Mariners did have one season where they won 116 games, if I'm not mistaken, which puts them at, I think, the most wins in a regular season in MLB history, if I'm pretty sure. So, I mean, maybe that's not that Blake Bortles lightning in a bottle, but that's something not to scoff at. Ichiro Suzuki, he put him on his back, put on his extended arm, stretching out there in the at-bat box, ready to go.
All right, let's see what they did in the playoffs that year. It was Mariners, Yankees in 01, and the Yankees were the team that lost to the Diamondbacks in the World Series that year. So they choked to the Yankees in the first round. So classic Yankees charcuterie.
Crazy stat that I saw was that 2010 through 2019 was the first decade that the Yankees did not make the World Series in their history, which was crazy to me. Just a side baseball note.
Yeah.
I've been watching the Mets get smacked by the Yankees the last 2 nights. It's been tough, but I'm trying to stay positive.
As a completely unbiased fan, wink, wink, that's got to change this year. I predict a Yankees World Series berth at the minimum.
Wow.
That's a little bit off topic.
We're going to have to keep some sort of tally of bold takes and see who fulfills them at some point later in the year. So moving on, we have our first segment change. And in this segment, crazy sports takes. We're going to go through some of the craziest takes that we've seen on the internet and debate the merits of them and the implications of them. So one crazy sports debate that I saw over NBA Twitter, it was taking NBA Twitter by storm, is people arguing over if LeBron could beat Mike Tyson in a street fight. And it got me thinking, along those same lines, who in pro sports would be the best UFC fighter? So I'm going to ask Pat first here and see what he thinks.
So I think the gut instinct with this question is to think of who would be the main guy in the heavyweight division, which is still fair to look into. But whenever I'm watching UFC, I always they show a couple stats when you go up to when introducing the viewer to the matchup. They got the age, they got the weight, which is always the same, and then they got the height and they got the arm length, the wingspan. So there's a guy who's a New York Knick who his style of play looks like it could work in the UFC. He's a scrapper, and he has the longest wingspan of any point guard in NBA history. That's Frank Ntilikina. He's currently 6'5" with a 7'1" wingspan. He's 200 pounds, so that would probably drop him down to he could drop to the 185 division. I mean, even though he's already a stick, like he could learn some crazy Masvidal techniques. Masvidal dropped like 22 pounds in 3 days. He could definitely drop 15 over the course of a couple months. I think Frank Ntilikina, he might be French, but he's got a little bit of toughness to him, and he's been. Sorry to anyone who's French listening.
After the entire nation of France.
He's got the desire. He's been frustrated with the Knicks. He's as I said in an earlier episode with Brooke Lopez, there was some sexual frustration built up in Brooklyn. He's ready to unleash that in Milwaukee. And with Frank Ntilikina, that's been building up with the New York Knicks, and he's just going to unleash that on the face of all UFC players that he faces. It's not a player, it's a fighter, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, that just frustration with James Dolan. That's got to get you riled up if you're a competitive person. The person I kind of went with a more thoroughbred route. He's huge. He's 6'1", 284. This is his fourth consecutive year in the 99 club in Madden. That's pretty legit. I'm going with Aaron Donald. If you've watched this guy's workout videos, he's insane. Like, if you watch him work out, he's probably one of the craziest athletes I've ever seen. I almost went with the easy route, LeBron James. He's just built different, but if you're a defensive end, that's such a combination of speed, strength, and just everything, athleticism. I don't really see anybody taking down Aaron Donald in the fight. So how do you go with Aaron Donald?
Well, I know who I'm not going with. That's Dallas Goddard.
Wait, what's the reason for that? He's got that. What's that part of the country with like Montana, Wyoming? He's got that. If you stuck him in a cabin, I mean, he's definitely. All right, I'm not gonna say it. Never mind.
He was the guy who got knocked out, I'm pretty sure, in a bar fight this offseason.
Yeah, I heard about that.
And he hit the ground like a sack of bricks. And I would expect more from a big man. But it's an interesting dynamic that you guys have here. And Frank Ntilikina, I'm sorry, I don't know if he's aggressive enough. I mean, he's not even aggressive going to the basket in the NBA.
He could easily intertwine some kickboxing into his game. I mean, he's got his length would override anything in my opinion. I think, and he's just an agile man. So, he's suave. He could if he was in the same hotel as his opponent, like that's a dangerous thing because he could sneak in their hotel room at night, sing them a little bedtime story, and then they're gonna go night on the mat the next night.
That's the opponent of the Frenchman you're bringing up right there.
Well, I think we're going to move on to our next topic, and this is also another change in segment. We are going with our segment Start, Bench, Cut. In this segment, it's pretty self-explanatory. You choose one player that you want to save, be playing regularly starting, and then one player that enters the bench, and one player that's cut. So we're doing an NBA edition here, young NBA edition. Luka Doncic, Jason Tatum, Zion Williamson. Who are you going to start, who are you going to bench, and who are you going to cut? Nico.
I'll start us off with who I'm going to cut. I hate to do this. As a Duke basketball fan, I hate to do this, but there's actually two Dukies in here, but the one I'm cutting right away is Zion Williamson. His upside is fantastic. If you're a franchise, you want someone who will sell you tickets. This guy's box office, channeling my inner Stephen A. This guy is box office. He's going to sell you jerseys. He's going to sell you tickets. He's trimming down. But just the injury concern is too much for me. He had a torn meniscus that he had to have surgically repaired before the season. He had a number of knee issues at Duke. And if I want to start a franchise, I want a player I know is going to be on the court. And if it's between these three guys, Zion, there are too many question marks. Going to have to cut him. I hope I'm the best. He's a fantastic player. His efficiency was incredible this year. A top 20 defensive player in the league per defensive plus minus or defensive win shares. But, yeah, the injury concerns are a little bit too much for me. So here's my spicy take. I'm going to have to be benching Luka Doncic. But right now, Luka Doncic is the best, most polished, and offensively dynamic player of the trio. He might even have the most impressive stat line in the entire NBA, averaging nearly 29, 9, and 9. He's a surgeon on the offensive end, dissecting defenses with step-back threes, flashy touch passes, and a myriad more number of weapons that can just absolutely obliterate defenses. And I think that throughout his career, he can be a near 30-point-per-game scorer. Larry Bird, number of guys like that. I think that could be Luka. But here are the reasons that I'm going to have to be benching him rather than having him be the starting cornerstone of my franchise from this trio. I don't see his upside being as great as who I'm starting. While I think if you get what you get right now for 10 years, you're a happy GM. 30-point per game scorer, but he's not the greatest athletic prospect we've ever seen. He gets it done, but he's not incredible athletically. And the second point is that his efficiency is the weakest of the trio, 46% from the field, 31% from three. Again, nothing to scoff at, but when you're plucking hairs here, you got to be really precise. So that's another slight concern. And defensively, he is the weakest of the trio. Ranking 141st in defensive win shares between Marcus Morris Sr. and Damian Lee. Who's Damian Lee? Warriors guy. If you don't watch a lot of basketball, you don't know who Damian Lee is, and that's who's next to Luka Doncic. So for those three reasons, I'm going to have to slot him at the bench position. So who I'm starting, as a Sixers fan, I got it right here. This hurts my heart. We missed out on him for bust of the century, Markelle Fultz. Makes me cry every night to this day, but I'm going to have to be going with Jason Tatum. After the All-Star break, this man was on a tear, averaging 30 points per game on 47% from three on nearly 9 attempts. That is insane. That is an insane stat. He's 6'8" with a 6'11" wingspan. He can jump out of the gym. He's dynamic. He was 9th in defensive win shares this season, which is pretty incredible. So he is upside as an elite defender. If you just watch his game, he's just so smooth, so flashy, both ends of the courts, banging out on LeBron, Eastern Conference Finals. And that's a nice little segue into this next point, but he's taken his team the furthest out of any of these guys in the playoffs. Zion's a rookie, clearly, so he hasn't had that opportunity, but Tatum's shown me he can do it, took his team to the Eastern Conference Finals. He's a guy I really like. I think he can be a top 3 player in the league, perennial MVP candidate. So that's what I'm going with.
I'm just going to pause for a second. I want to make sure that I heard you correctly, that you put Jason Tatum over Luka Doncic. I just want to make sure that I heard you correctly.
Crystal, Jesse, you heard me crystal clear. If I'm
Pat,
starting a franchise for the next 10 years, it's splitting hairs. And I had to go with Jason Tatum over Luka Doncic for the reasons I laid out. I think his upside is greater. I think Luka, while maybe he can make some minor strides, add a couple new moves to his game, I don't see a whole lot of more growth that this guy can take. He's been playing in Europe since he's 16, so this guy's polished, which is right now it's incredible. He is clearly the best player of the three. I'm not disputing that, but going forward, I think Tatum's got more upside, and I think that the post All-Star break form we got is proof of that.
all right, well, Pat, we're gonna have to hear your side of the story now.
Yeah, I'm not gonna knock Nico's argument for Tatum having more defensive potential than Luka, and also that he is more of an athletically imposing specimen. But I don't know if I necessarily agree with what you said, that he took the Celtics the farthest. I don't know if he was the best player on the team when they faced up against LeBron. I mean, that team was pretty even throughout, like, the starting lineup and, like, who was providing. I think Al Horford was the main, like, contributor on that team. Besides, you had Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart. Nico, who'd you say was the biggest contender for Jason Tatum on being, like, the most important to that team?
Yeah, Al Horford was definitely a key player. Terry Rozier, that was the Scary Terry series, if I'm not mistaken. So that was a piece. But I think the numbers show Jason Tatum, that game, even though it was a lost Game 7, he was the leading scorer, leading rebound guy. I think he was 19 at that point. For a 19-year-old to be able to do that toe-to-toe with LeBron James, 7 games, he was the key player in that series. His growth that postseason showed me that he comes alive when it's necessary, and he's got that clutch gene, and I'm buying into that.
Yeah, so I could see that argument there. He was very young, had a lot of weight on his shoulders. We haven't really seen Luka in that position in the playoffs, but what we have seen is Luka in the regular season, and in his second NBA season, he's averaging 28, 9 rebounds and 8 assists. And you did say that was a ridiculous stat margin, but what I'm going to mention is that Oscar Robertson and Russell Westbrook are the only other 2 players who have ever had that stat line. And also, let's look at the Mavericks roster, like who he's distributing the ball to. Where do all those assists come from? You got Seth Curry, great shooter. Tim Hardaway has had a great season. Kristaps he's getting there. I mean, he's definitely got a much higher ceiling than where he's at right now, but he's getting there. If you think about the players that Jason Tatum has had on a team, like, you can't really compare with the support that he's had. I think the Celtics are a much more complete team this year, and Luka's averaging 28, and he's the player that's circled 5 times over every time that the Mavericks are going into a game against another team, and he's still dropping 28 and having all those assists and rebounds. I think because he showed that he can do it with a weaker supporting cast than Tatum, not than Zion, but than Tatum. I think that's why I'm going to have to go with him, and I think his creativity with the ball just it can't be overemphasized.
Well, it's good stuff, gentlemen. Good stuff. I'm enjoying this so far. And for our final segment of the day, we are doing our lightning round. And in this segment, you're going to have 20 seconds per person, per team. And we're doing pretender or contender. So I'm going to list the team. You guys are each going to have 20 seconds to make your claim on that team. We're starting with Pat. Oklahoma City Thunder.
I mean, they're a pretender, but I respect what they've done so far this year. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has grown a lot this season. Chris Paul's done a lot with the roster that he's given, and Steven Adams, you don't want to see that guy in a bar after accidentally slipping by his girlfriend. Maybe maybe he was looking for someone to get angry at, and he just punches you for no reason. You didn't do anything wrong, but you're going to die probably. So respect to him, but Thunder are not a contender.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Pat there. They are a pretender, and to just kind of echo Pat's statements, Chris Paul, I think, has done potentially one of the most understated jobs in the league this season, helping that Oklahoma City Thunder team to the same record as the Houston Rockets team who traded him for Russell Westbrook. He's been a statesman for the game. He's really helped that franchise. Like Pat said, I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a future top 5 point guard in the league. They're a great organization, but they are not there yet. So, yeah, they're a pretender this season.
Maybe Steven Adams was a player that we could have mentioned in the UFC arena. He could be dangerous. But moving on to our next team, the Utah Jazz. Nico, what are your thoughts?
At the beginning of the season, if you asked me this question, I would have said they were a contender, but I think the loss of Bogdanović was brutal. This is a team that lacks elite wings, with their two centerpieces being Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, Flight React's least favorite player. But I don't think that it's there. You need wings to win, especially in the Western Conference when you've got guys like Kawhi, Paul George, LeBron being the staples of the two top teams in the West. I just don't think they have the firepower to get it done. Mike Conley has been a disappointment this season. And yeah, I think that loss of Bogdanović is really the key factor that's going to happen to make them a pretender for me.
So I do want to add some controversy, but I don't think you could say the Utah Jazz are a contender, especially considering the fragility of their locker room as of now. Donovan Mitchell is definitely going to benefit from this restart. It's pretty much between him, LeBron, and Harden for which players had the most minutes. I saw a stat. Those are the three players with the most minutes of any players on any playoff team. Mike Conley is just not. I mean, the team he helps the team, but he's not doing what his contract says that he should be doing. I mean, if the Jazz face off against the Rockets, which they are as of now, that will not be a good series for the Jazz, just because Gobert will be a non-factor on the defensive end against that stretch. He's gonna have Robert Covington and PJ Tucker when he's on offense, but he's gonna struggle on the perimeter in that series. So they're definitely not a contender.
Well, moving us out east, this should get a little bit more interesting, hopefully. We got the Miami Heat. Contender or contender, Pat?
I mean, I don't think there really is. There's three teams in the East that I see as contenders, and I don't know if they're going to be on the list in the future, but the Heat are not one of those teams. If Jimmy Butler's the best player on a team, then you're not really a contender. So I'll leave it at that.
I'll agree with you that they are not a contender for me this season. They're a pretender, but that's a spicy Jimmy Butler take. I think he showed a lot of good stuff last season as a Sixers fan, but going back to the
That one
Heat,
hurt, Nico.
that one did hurt. That was a chip last year. The shot didn't fall, but it's a story for another day. But yeah, I'm going to agree. The Heat are a pretender this season. I'm sorry for not sparking any controversy, but Jimmy Butler, yeah, he's a great player. Bam Adebayo is a great player, but this is a team a few years out. Tyler Hero's young. Kendrick Nunn's fresh on the scene. He's a young guy. I just don't think this team has the firepower to get it done against the other better teams in the Eastern Conference, let alone the West.
Personally, I'm going to have to disagree with both of you.
Oh, wow.
What the fuck?
I think the Heat have the firepower. They have the shooting. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people. And Jimmy Butler is a certified dog. He is a leader that you want to have. And funny story, he just got busted. Someone filed a noise complaint because he was practicing dribbling in his room late at night. I know that's not necessarily a make or break thing, but it speaks to the mentality Heat are staying in Florida. It's going to feel like they are not too displaced. I like the Heat. I think they're going to surprise some people. I don't know if they have the legs to win, but I think for sure they're a contender. Moving on, I'm going to ask Nico this. Are the Toronto Raptors, last year's NBA champions, pretenders or contenders?
I think the Raptors are clearly a contender. They have the second best coach in the Eastern Conference, in my opinion, behind the Miami Heat's Eric Spoelstra. They got Nick Nurse up there in Toronto. They've got an improving Spicy P, Pascal Siakam. He brings the ludicrous sauce every night. He's a great player. Perhaps he could become one of the first players in NBA history to be back-to-back most improved players. Kyle Lowry's kind of got that Jimmy Butler mentality. He's a dog. He's a leader. OG Anunoby is a great player. Fred VanVleet is a great piece. They're deep. They're one of the best defensive teams in the league. And, yeah, I think they have the firepower to get it done. They've got the experience. And even as a returning champion, they've got a chip on their shoulder. Everyone's written them off without Kawhi. So I think that the Raptors do have the firepower to get it done.
So to add to what Jesse said last time, Andre Iguodala is a guy that you'd want in your locker room. So I guess that helps Jesse's argument that the Heat are a contender. With the Raptors, if we're thinking can they make the finals, I say yes. If we're thinking can they win the finals, I say hell no. They do have a chip on their shoulder, but they don't have it on the offensive end to beat whoever's coming out of the West. Serge Ibaka, he's been around the block probably like 85,000 times. He's getting up there in age, and Marc Gasol he's a clunker too, but he could still give you one of those weird hook shots from Lou Alcindor back in the day. You're right, the Raptors are a great defensive team, but I'm gonna keep it simple. They're not beating whoever comes out of the West.
I would also,
as you guys could hear in the middle of last segment, our alarm is going off. We're running out of time, but we've enjoyed ourselves here for episode 1 of the Peanut Gallery podcast. I want to thank you guys for joining us. Nico, Pat, thank you guys for being such great debaters, and hopefully to many more episodes. We're excited to continue to be a part of your guys' week.
Yeah, let's keep that the same every episode where Nico doesn't get to respond to whatever I say at the end, because he would have said something valid, and I don't need that for my reputation.
All right.
Bringing out the spicy sauce the next couple episodes. I'm taking everyone down. Let's go.
All right.